Hello and welcome to another episode of Top Deck, the series where we take a look at some of the leading TCG deck lists. Now before we get into this video, I just want to give a huge thanks to everyone who has contributed to the series so far. We've got over 100 episodes up already, and fast approaching 150, and I'm sure we're going to hit 200 fairly quickly too as well. So if you have topped any sort of competitive event, you know, something like a regional or higher, maybe an LLDS once that season comes around, and you're interested in taking part in the series, feel free to get in touch via the Facebook page, and we can share your insights and your strategy for building your deck and your siding, so that the whole world can see just how to improve upon their strategies. So this time we have a long-standing contributor to the series. This is Ben, who has recently topped a regional, placing 6th place, so we've made it into top 8 with a Salamangreat strategy, and this is a pretty interesting list for me. So let's focus on the differences between this and sort of the typical builds we've seen before. Quite a lot of the recent Salamangreat builds have been focused on sort of trap-heavy lineups in order to make your turn 1 play better, and I believe Joshua Schmitz mentioned in his Dusseldorf profile that the turn 1 play is already so very good, especially with the number of hand traps that you can play, that he wanted to have ways to make the turn 2 plays much better. So we see that the inclusion of the extenders, the Crusadia Reclusia in here, allows you to make your turn 2 plays a lot stronger, so you can actually break through boards. That also works with the foul as well, just the ability to put more monsters onto the field so you can make your bigger link plays. Gives you more ways of dealing with problems. That said, you know, you don't sacrifice anything from the turn 1 play. You've still got things like the double roar in here, the rage available, the call by the grave. You can set your super poly here, which is an interesting option for the mirror match. I don't know how useful it is in other matches, given that you can only go into the Violet Chimera, but it's a great option to have anyway for the mirror match. It's just an auto win essentially there, which is awesome to have. Apart from that, the list is pretty standard though. We've seen the dominance of Ash, Vela and Phantasme as great hand traps to have. And then he's gone for Debug instead of Buffalo. I think Debug is generally the preferable choice for the majority of players, at least the ones on the Salamangreat Facebook group, just because Debug on its own is an actual combo, whereas the Buffalo on its own, you have to take a risk and hope that it pays off. So generally players are swinging towards Debug, but you know, it depends on what kind of strategy you want to approach when you build your deck. The extra deck is something that we've seen becoming increasingly standard amongst the Salamangreat players. I think the only thing that varied between the modern builds and the initial builds was a lot of the initial ones were playing Baguska, and we see Dweller being more important. There is some variation, at least, or some discussion in the Salamangreat Facebook group again, about whether to run Violet Chimera or maybe a Borosword, and we see that the Violet Chimera is the option here. I think it is generally just better. You know, you get to play the Super Poly and the Fusion of Fire, you can go up against so many decks. Like, if a Thunder Dragon player leaves their Colossus in attack position, then as long as they don't have an interrupt, you have game there, which is kind of absurd. So having that option seems very, very strong, at least to me. So looking at the side deck then, we can see that, although I did mention that the a lot of the Salamangreat builds that we've seen have traps in the main deck, Ben has decided to put most of them in, well, he's put the trap engine in the side deck, so the Sanctums and the Scythe are all in the side deck. He hasn't opted to play the trap trick because it fills up too many slots in there. We have got the sort of typical 9 of Pancratops, Twisters, and Reboot. These are all like extremely good options in things like they're options that you can take for the mirror match. They're good against all of the back row decks. You can put Twin and Pank against Striker to make that matchup a little bit more towards your side, because it can be a little bit 50-50 there. He's also siding the Paro. This is something that has been discussed on Facebook quite a lot recently. It's just, as far as I can tell, it's only in here for when you go into time and you want to be able to essentially like steal a win. In a lot of things we've seen recently, you just try and steal a win by, like, previously it was Cowboy, we've seen the Black Ship of Corn from the recent Orcus decks, and now Paro in the Salamangreat deck. So it looks like every deck is trying to build any kind of way to just win the game in time here. Apart from that, fairly standard for the side deck, to be honest. So let's get into the actual siding strategy. So the way that he thought about the deck beforehand and what he intended to do to beat other competitive decks in the meta. So True Draco is the first option that he's put up here. This is a matchup where you have to take out quite a lot of cards which are just ineffective against it, which can mean that the first game for True Draco can be especially good for them. So he's having to take out Phantasme, Veilers, and Callbys. None of these cards really do anything in that particular matchup, but it does mean that he gets to put in Twins, Panks, and Red Reboot. So as I mentioned, those 9 being pretty much staple in Salamangreat lists that we've seen recently. And that gives you great ability to just deal with so much back row. He's doing the same siding strategy for first and second because True Draco is generally a slower deck. For the mirror match, the Sanctums of Scythe come in when you're going first, obviously, which means you have to make a little bit of room, so taking out a Foxy here, 1 Raw, and 1 of the Crusadia, and 1 Spinny. That seems fair enough. Personally, I think I might take out more of the Crusadias, but potentially it's a lot more helpful when you're going into, like, attempting to break the board in the following turns anyway. And then for going second, yeah, obviously you want the Fusions of Fire and the Pankratops, and the Callby doesn't do an awful lot, since you're just really trying to OTK at that point. And then for Thunder, or sort of Thunder Danger decks, again, Sanctums of Scythes going in. Those decks have become increasingly reliant on the extra deck, especially, actually both of those decks really rely on building a Sayudra in order to fix hands and summon enough monsters. So if you can stop them from making that, then you can generally do pretty well in there. And then going second, the Pankratops coming in, just a big body, essentially. And that allows you to take out the Call by the Graves, which I'm going to do an awful lot after the first turn. And for sort of Guard Dragon type decks, it's very similar. I think this is exactly the same, actually, yeah. So once again, Pank coming in, going second, and just locking them out of the extra deck when you're going first. So let's look at the siding strategies for some of the other decks. We've got the Azathoth decks and the Sky Strikers left over. So Azathoth going first, very similar. So same siding strategy for going first, because it's a combo deck, it needs access to its extra deck. But for going second, Twin Twisters also coming in because you need to be able to deal with the rank up magic. That's really the only difference there. If you get hit by an Azathoth, you lose, so you have to put something in to deal with it. For Sky Strikers, Twin Twisters coming in when going first and second, but when going second also putting in the Pankratops, just more ways of dealing with the problem cards, and I think that's fair enough. You know, Pankratops is 2600, it can deal with one of the anchors, or it can bait something out at least, and that can really put you in an advantageous spot. So that's it for the siding strategy from Ben. I did ask him a few extra questions, and we've also got his matchups, so let's run. I'll just put the matchups on the screen. I don't think there's anything hugely important that needs to be brought up here. The True Draco matchup is a kind of a tricky one, so he did lose the first one that he went up against, but he beat the second one anyway. Trickstar's a pretty easy matchup in general, and then he did pretty well with taking on the Thunder Dragon, Guard Dragon Danger thing, using the Paro in order to steal the game, because the opponent was trying to play for time, and then Paro just puts you in such a good position. Like 2,000 life points is massive, like absolutely massive. So that's it for the rounds. For the additional questions, the reason why he decided to play Salamangreat for this event was because he got really fed up of losing to it at Dusseldorf, so he decided that he wanted to actually just play it after the event. He felt that the deck could really win out, win without the artifact engine in the main deck, and you can't guarantee winning the dice roll anyway. However, the cards can be very good going second, that he's managed to make the changes for anyway. He said that the Paro was insane because so many people just played kind of slowly, so it meant that you could just scoop at any point as long as there was enough time on the clock for you to just adjust your side deck, put in the Paro and win the third one. Or you can just or if like you're at any point where you feel like your opponent is trying to hurry things along, you can give yourself a 2,000 point buffer and they just won't be able to deal with it, so you win from there, which is kind of crazy. He says that there are a lot of extenders that he's thought about, and he decided to go with the Reclusia because his testing group has considered quite a few things, but most of them haven't actually been released yet, so he's not been able to use those, and the other options just aren't as optimal to him. In terms of changes, he would make a few, but there's stuff that he's quite unsure about at the moment, so maybe drop the Spinny to 2 or something, but he's not really sure about it at the moment. The most difficult deck to face, he says, is just any deck that flips Floodgates, as you have very few outs like Foxy. So you have to choose which effect of Foxy you want, and think ahead of your opponent in order to be able to out their back row. Shoutouts go to The Clique, if you know you know, Big Orbit Cards and Big Orbit Games and the team, Luke Delaney, Stuart Watts, Luke Bennett, Jake Quincy, Connor Kelly, John Daniel, Greg Johnson, and the whole group, who are just awesome friends together, and they all bounce ideas and theory off each other really well. And additionally, on top of that, promo code BIGSTEW5 for 5% off at YGO City if you're interested in picking up any cards or collectibles from there. So thanks very much, Ben, for coming on, contributing to the channel once again, and fantastic record as always, and great to see you've managed to pick up the Salamangreat deck, master its strategy, and then take it to a top spot at a competitive event. And we look forward to seeing you in the future. Thanks for watching this episode of Top Deck. If you have any comments or suggestions that you would like to make, leave them in the comment section down below. Check out the description for details of how you can get involved in this series. You can enter by voice interview, or instead you could just send all of your information over Facebook Messenger. Anything like that will be absolutely fine. If you want to see anything in particular from the upcoming series, then be sure to get in touch, and I'll see you guys in the next video.